You know, often when I preach, I wonder sort of if people will actually respond as they go into their week, and they will have will they actually respond to what God has said to them that day? Sort of wonder, have they put it in practice? Have they had the opportunity to do this stuff? Well, today is pretty cool because we're going to have the chance to respond right here in the service and to really just appreciate what God has done. Father, I just want to pray that as we reflect on your word today, that we would just be able to understand in a better way than maybe we've ever understood what you have done for us. That our hearts might just be full in this time as we consider the life that you've given us. And that we might have this opportunity to just enjoy a time praising you and responding to all that you have done. Pray this in your precious name. Amen. First thing that I want to consider this morning is that life is a gift from God. This whole thing of creation, this whole life that God has given us, it is a gift from God. And I don't know how many of you have ever had experience well, actually all of us should have had experience in giving gifts, I hope. But I don't know how many of you have ever had that experience where you give someone a gift and they're sort of like, thank you. That's nice. And you're like, well, I kept the receipt. Anyone ever had that experience, right? It's really awkward, And then, of course, I hope all of us have had the experience where we've given someone's gift and you just see their face light up. And they're just so excited about this gift that you've given them. Now this I could say isn't always the case, but often it is the case that when you put a lot of thought into a gift and you really think about the person and what they like and what they want and what will make them happy, then you get that response where their face lights up and they're so excited. But when you kind of just last minute, oh man, I need to do something, and you just quickly run and buy whatever you can, that's when you normally get the thank you kind of awkward response. You know what I'm saying? Because there's something more special about when you receive a gift and there's a lot of thought behind it. When someone really has thought about you and what you need. And that's an amazing thing. And I want us to look at life this morning, first of all, as a gift. And I want us to understand that when God gave us this gift, there was a lot of thought that went into it. If you look at creation in the first place, God put a great deal of thought into this world that he created and into life. Look at our bodies. Look how complex we are. And look how everything works together within our bodies and just how amazing, just our bodies alone. Oh, that God, I thought of trying to find some picture of an alien, but I didn't want to scare people this morning. Just imagine if God made us look like this. Imagine the ugliest alien that you can think of. And with movies these days, you see some weird-looking things. I'm so glad God put a great deal of thought into this gift of life. Even if you think at some of the things like the stars in the sky that we can just appreciate. There's a lot of things in this world that need to be there for life to exist, but there's also a lot of things that are just there for us to enjoy and just appreciate. And God just put so much thought into this gift of life. And we messed everything up. And I want us to see, second of all, as far as this gift is concerned of life, is that we don't deserve this gift. We don't deserve the gift of life. I don't know how many of you have ever created something that didn't work. But when I make something that doesn't work, I scrunch it up or toss it up or break it up and I throw it in the rubbish bin. Because it doesn't work. I made it. It was supposed to do this. It doesn't do it. So, chuck it. That's how I operate. I don't keep it and I don't try and fix it. No, I just chuck it out. And we think that God owes us something. God created us. We didn't work. We messed up. Did he chuck us away? No. He brought back life at his own cost. As the created, we deserve to be separated from God. But God didn't give up on us. He put a plan in motion. And it wasn't just a thoughtless plan, this gift of life. It wasn't just a, hey, last minute thing, let me send Jesus to earth. Because maybe that's the only option. We see right from the book of Genesis, The entire Bible speaks about salvation. It speaks about the gift of life, that God had this plan right from the beginning. He thought about it. He intended to do it. Even from the book of Genesis, we read things that show us salvation, that show us the cross. If you look at all the Old Testament prophecies, years, hundreds of years before Jesus died, that account for his death, some of them almost like literally. I mean, they're so clear. This plan that God put in process was intentional and well thought out. In fact, I don't believe that any gift in all of history has ever been given with as much thought and as much love as this one. This is an amazing gift that God has given us. Can you imagine, getting back to the story that we read a moment ago, can you imagine what it must have been like for this girl when Jesus gave her back her life? Can you imagine her thoughts as she lay there dying? As she lay there in those moments just before she passed away, and she knew that this was happening. And then moments later, and I suppose in her mind, there she was, awake. What am I doing here? It must have been, I just can't imagine what must have been going through her mind. When Jesus arrived at the house, there were flute players and a large crowd was already mourning her death. Can you imagine the change in atmosphere when Jesus walked out with this girl and she was alive? Can you imagine what it must have been like? Can you picture the tears of joy on her parents' faces? This response that I see in my mind to this miracle that Jesus performed those years ago, this is the appropriate response to the gift of life. It is the response of joy. It is this lighting up of the face when we realize the gift that we've been given. I think of a child. This is maybe the easiest way for me to understand this reaction. When you give a young child a gift and their face just lights up. They're so excited to open that present. I can't wait. I mean, I remember getting told, you have to go to sleep early on Christmas Eve, because if you see Santa Claus, then your gifts turn into dust. Because we were so excited to get that present. That's what we were told. Yeah, these things that parents do, it doesn't lie to your kids. And can you just, this is the reaction, this is the response of joy. It's a beautiful thing. And I want to say to you this morning that if you've accepted this gift of salvation, if you are a Christian, if you have committed your life to following Christ, you have been given life in exchange for death. First of all, you've been given a new spiritual life. And one day you're going to be given a new physical body. And I'm sure all of us can say amen to that as we experience all the pains and frustrations of our limited earthly bodies. We're going to be given a new body, a new physical body in eternal life. It's going to be an amazing thing. We have been given life in exchange for death. And there is only one response to that. And this morning, in just 20 minutes' time, 15 minutes' time, we're going to have the chance to respond. We're going to have the chance to think about what Christ has done for us. We're going to have the chance once again to think about the fact that we have been given life, the most precious gift. And as we prepare for that time, in your hearts, as you hear the word this morning, it's going to be a chance for joy. Sometimes in worship, it's appropriate to shed tears or to mourn even, because sometimes God shows us the sinfulness of our hearts, and we do that. But there are other times in worship when the right response is one of joy. So this morning, I want to encourage you as we sing out, shout out, dance before the Lord, do whatever it is, but just express your joy to Him, because He has given you life. Thought about from the very beginning of time, this gift that He gives you. A second thing, if the slide changes, I'll give it a few seconds, that I want to consider, is that the creation of life displays the power of God. And it's an amazing thing that we take for granted creation, that God created this entire universe from nothing, and then He took dust, He took matter that is not living. We can't explain this scientifically. And He breathed life into it. And every time you look at a beautiful view, or you admire a flower, or you interact with another human being, you are witnessing the power of God to create life. That's an amazing thing. What is more, we know that Jesus has the power to exchange death for life. And this is amazing. Because we see death as this finality as human beings. It's this natural thing that we do. And Jesus has the power to exchange death for life. And He says in verse 24 of our text, "Go away, for the girl is not dead but sleeping." And they laughed at Him. Because why? Because we can't accept this. We battle to think that this could actually be possible. And even though these people had heard about and witnessed the power of Christ, they couldn't accept or believe that He was that powerful to be able to say to someone who is dead, "Get up." There are many people who claim to believe and follow Christ, but they don't really believe in His power. They say, "You know what, I'm going to do the Christian thing, and I'm going to have all the Christian standards because it's a good way to live. It's good to have those morals. I want those values and those morals in my life. I want to be a good person. I want to go to church. I want to pray. I want to do all of the right things. And I want my family to have that." But who don't believe in the power of God. They don't believe in a God who does miracles. They don't believe in a God who heals. They don't believe in a supernatural, powerful God. And so what happens is that we try and do all of these things in our own strength, and that's just legalism. That's just trying to do all the right things, but we do it without any power at all. Someone once suggested to me that the story of Jonah is figurative. They said it's not literal. That didn't actually happen. It's just figurative. It's just to make a point. Right? And I've heard so many people try and explain away all the miracles in the Bible. No. That was just, the Red Sea wasn't that deep. So it was kind of shallow stuff. I've heard so many people try and explain away the miracles in the Bible, or even miracles that they hear about happening today. I've heard so many people do that. But the biggest display of God's power, is the fact that He exchanges death for life. You might be able to explain away every single miracle in the Bible, but how do you explain away this? How do you do that? You might be able to say, you know what? When someone is healed, it's just that they were given the right medicine and everything, and then their body just sort of healed itself. And I'm not arguing with the fact that God has created our bodies in an amazing way to fight disease and everything else. But you can kind of argue it away. You can explain it away. Right? If someone is dead, and they have been certified dead for 3 days, like Lazarus, right? It was 3 days, I think, eh? It was a couple of days. Dead. And now he's alive. How do you explain it? I want to say to you this morning, if you are one of these who, like the people in the story, are laughing and saying in your heart, "You know what, I want to do the Christian thing, but I don't believe in the power of God, really. I'm not trying to explain it away." You come to a problem at this point. Because this is, to me, the ultimate power of God. I mean, even in fictitious heroes aren't given this kind of power. Right? Heroes in stories and superhero movies and that. You don't hear of superheroes who raise people from the dead. In fact, most of the movies these days, the hero will do all these amazing things and then someone will die in the story. And they'll be all like, "Oh man, what do I do now? I'm going to give up on this hero thing because I can't save them. Couldn't help them," and then they'll be encouraged to carry on and save other people. But they can't bring that person back from the dead. And that's fictitious heroes. We could give them any superpower we want. And even then we battle to do it. This is the ultimate power of God. And there are two responses to this. Either we can be like the people in this account who in our hearts just don't accept it, don't really believe it, can't fathom this. And we say, "You know what? I'm going to do all of this stuff, but I can't believe in the power of God." But there's a problem with this response. Because if you don't believe in the supernatural power of God, And if you don't believe that he can do these things, then it's impossible for you to believe that he could raise someone from the dead. And if you don't believe that God can raise someone from the dead, then you can't believe that Christ was risen from the dead, right? Really. You might come to church on an Easter Sunday and celebrate it, but if you can't believe a small miracle, of a smaller miracle of healing, I'm not going to say small because it's huge, or something along those lines, how can you possibly believe that Jesus was raised from the dead? And if you don't believe that, then salvation doesn't exist. Because if he didn't have the power to defeat sin and death, then there is no salvation. You see the implications? If we don't believe in a God who is powerful, then we may as well give up on Christianity altogether. What's the point? Because all it is just following rules and living without power. The second response is to have faith. To say, you know what? If I can believe this, if I can believe that Christ was risen from the dead, then why should I not believe that God can do miracles in my life? Why should I not believe that God can bring healing? Why should I not believe that God can provide for me in circumstances where I just cannot see the way out of it? Why should I not believe in that? To have a faith in a God of the impossible. Because if you really want to follow Christ, this is the only appropriate response. This is the only real option. See why now it says that it is impossible to please God without faith? Without faith, at the end of it is that we cannot really accept salvation for what it is, the resurrection of Christ. And again, in a moment, we're going to have an opportunity to worship together. And I want to encourage you not only to respond in joy to the gift, but to respond in faith. To take a moment, so often in our busyness, we don't have many of these opportunities where we can just worship God and just take our lives and say, you know what, no matter what I'm going through, I want to respond in faith to you, God. Because I'm here today to remember the greatest display of power. And this God is in me. So as I worship you, God, as I spend this time focusing on what you did, I want to declare my faith to you and my life to you, completely surrendered and trusting in you. Last thing that I want to look at is that the exchange of death for life is God's mission. It's God's mission for this world. The people who witnessed and experienced this miracle were so impacted and so amazed and so blessed that they spread this to the whole region, the whole district. It says that everyone in the whole district heard about what had happened. And they were speaking about what had happened. And I'm not surprised. I mean, if you were there, what would you do? You'd be telling everybody, this is amazing what God has done. I'm pretty sure this young girl, we're not told, but I would say it's a pretty good guess to say that she probably talked about this for the rest of her life. This story, this day, this impact. And this is what God desires. He longs to see more people accepting his gift of life. Because it is a gift, but it has to be accepted. Like any gift. If someone brings you a gift, you can say, I don't want that. I'm okay, I'm good. Sometimes we don't like to receive gifts. Some of us, we find it difficult that someone has just selflessly given a gift. And the gift needs to be accepted. And for people to accept that the gift is there, they need to know that the gift is there, right? They can't accept something they don't know exists. Someone needs to lead them to Jesus. Someone needs to tell them about what he has done for them so that they may follow him and experience the new life that we have experienced as Christians. They cannot accept something that they don't know exists. Evangelism, when we say that word, we get nervous as Christians. Most of us. We get nervous. We get scared. And for some reason, it's a scary thing. And a lot of people find it really, really hard. And I understand to speak to people about Jesus. Especially people who are anti-Christianity and don't want to hear this stuff. But what I have found is that there is something incredibly powerful in just sharing your story. In this whole account, all that the people did is they shared the story of what had happened. That's it. They didn't try and go into the district with all of these theological debates and all of these clever arguments and everything else. They just said, you know what? You might believe whatever you might believe, but this is what God has done for me. That's it. That is probably the most powerful thing that you have to give someone else, to show them the truth behind salvation. Because they can see it in your life. They can see it in your behavior. They can see it in your actions. And all you're doing at the end of the day, you know what? I'm not going to argue with what you think or what you believe, but this is what God has done for me. Just to share your story and how your life has been changed and how you've experienced something new and something amazing in this gift. If you can't appreciate the gift for what it is, it's going to be difficult to put that across. If you can't appreciate the power of God for what it is, it's going to be difficult to put that across. But once you accept that, your story will change lives. And Easter is not just a public holiday where we get a little bit more extra time off in this country. It's not just a time when it's particularly important to come to church, a few times on a weekend. It's not what it's about. But Easter, if you think about it, is our story. For each of us, that story looks a little bit different. But it's our story of an amazing God who rescued us from death and gave us life. And my prayer and my hope and my desire this morning is that we have understood in a deeper way what this life really is. What it really means for us. So I'm going to ask the worship team to come up and just get ready. And I'm just going to give us a moment, even before we go into worship, just to give you an opportunity to just reflect in your own life on what this means to you. And I want to encourage you to respond in this time, in your heart, to what God has said. Respond to the gift of life. Don't hold back like we do as adults. Be like a kid. You know what I'm saying? As you worship God, just let it all go and be like a kid. Just respond in joy, because He's given you the greatest gift. Respond in faith to God. Choose to trust Him this morning. Like we heard in the story of Joshua over the last number of months and ended off with, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Respond in faith to God this morning, who has the power to raise the dead. Something we either have to accept or reject. It's just that simple. And my prayer is that in the days that lie ahead, you will also respond by telling your story. And I'm excited this morning. I don't want to steal the thunder, but there are going to be a couple of people during our time of worship who are going to share their story. And that's going to be an exciting thing. Let's just enjoy this time as we respond to God. I just want to give you a moment. Why don't we just reflect on God? Let's just spend a few moments in silent prayer. And just as we prepare our hearts to respond to Him this morning, let's pray together.